physiological activity where you can keep the body and mind healthy. But this the spiritual aspects of this Ashtanga Yoga have been lost in this Kali Yuga. And Prabhupada is pointing out that the reason for this is because the culture is not there anymore, of this Varnashrama Dharma culture where everyone, Prabhupada says, but specifically the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas were given this knowledge, and they were given the opportunity to practice this process of yoga from the very beginning of their life. And this is simply not available for hardly anyone today in this world. Of course, we're pretty young. Most of the people here are pretty young, and we're trying to get into spiritual life as soon as we possibly can. But previously, latest by the age of 5, the child was sent out of the house to go live in what's called a gurukul, which is a place where a guru teaches his disciples the process of yoga from the very beginning of their life. And this is recommended by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto. And then further on, Narada Muni kind of explains this principle of brahmacharya, which is of course controlling the senses, practicing celibacy, living at the gurukul, surrendering to the spiritual master. But what is integral in this principle of brahmacharya is discipline. And this discipline is practically lost in all varieties of cultures throughout the world. Nonetheless, Srila Prabhupada has established brahmacharya ashrams all around the world. He's established temples where people can come and become disciplined in the process of yoga. And it's a little bit different than what was taught in previous ages, but this bhakti yoga is not only on the same spiritual level, but it's actually considered to be more potent. It's actually considered to be more effective than this process of yoga, which is being described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the principles of yoga which are practiced in this dhyana yoga or ashtanga yoga that we're discussing in Bhagavatam right now are the same principles that must be followed in bhakti yoga. Specifically, this idea of guru parampara, that this is an integral factor which is prevalent in any bona fide spiritual activity. Specifically in the yoga processes, a guru is necessary to not only to instruct the disciple, give guidance, and train them like this, but ultimately the guru is required to plant the seed of bhakti in the heart of the disciple. And of course, we have verses which are describing that we are eternal. What is this? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Kabunai. That is describing that we are eternal servants of Krishna. That this is already in our heart. All we have to do is awaken it. But this Prabhupada explains. So you can see the many parallels of what Prabhupada is describing in this purport, along with what Lord Chaitanya is instructing Rupa Goswami in the Madhya Lila of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, with this whole bhakti lata, the cultivation of the seed of devotional service. And in the purport of this Brahmanda Brahmite Kon Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij, in the purport of this verse, Prabhupada is explaining that this bij, this seed that is given to the disciple, so in one sense it was already there in the heart of the living entity. But Prabhupada says that just how anything has to have a beginning, anything has to have an idea in the beginning. This bij is like the idea, and unless we are given that idea by a bona fide spiritual master, it will never come about in the heart of a conditioned soul. We might come up with so many ideas. There's so many inventors and entrepreneurs, and people are innovating in so many different ways, and everyone's coming up with new ideas, and they're doing so many startups here and there. And these things are always going on. These bijas of material life are constantly popping up in the heart of the conditioned soul. But the bhakti lata bij, the seed of the creeper of devotional service, it never arises in one who is bewildered by the three modes of material nature, of the conditioned soul who is bound up in karma and in all these different things. Therefore, it is necessary to have a spiritual master specifically for this reason, and this is called Guru Prasad. This is by the mercy of Krishna, we are given a bona fide guru, and by the mercy of a guru, we are given the seed of devotional service. And this is the real prasad of a spiritual master. So many people might go to the Guruji and say, oh, please give me your blessings. Oh, please, I want to have a healthy family. I want to have a good job, get my degree or anything like this. But the real prasad of the spiritual master is the seed of devotional service. And this is something that can only come from the spiritual master. And it is explained, there's a verse, I'm not sure the Bengali, but it's basically saying that the chanting of Hare Krishna, it's not, basically you don't have to do anything other than chant Hare Krishna. So many people take this and say, oh, why should I get initiated by a spiritual master? Why should I follow the four rags? Why should I do any of these things? But Prabhupada is talking about the different stages of chanting Hare Krishna. And first you have the offensive stage, and then you have the clearing stage, or what he's calling the reflective stage here, and then the offenseless stage. And it's explained that if one wants to actually come to the platform of offenseless chanting, then one must be given the seed of devotional service by the spiritual master. One must take initiation via the process which is authorized in the scriptures. This is actually a necessity in spiritual life, unless one wants to be born again and again after, just chanting Hare Krishna and enjoying on the side. And one can do this, but if one really knows what's beneficial for oneself, then they should take full advantage of this process of Krishna consciousness, which is coming down in parampara. So this Guru parampara is something which is essential not only in the ancient Ashtanga yoga practice that is being described here, but it's just as important in this process that we're following today, that actually everything is coming from the Guru parampara. And actually, if you look at, so Prabhupada uses the word creeper, which I wasn't familiar with before reading Prabhupada's books. It's not really a very common word in the West, at least. But a creeper is basically like a little vine. It's not like an independent plant that grows by itself without any support. A creeper is something that needs to be supported by a larger thing. So usually, like, people put like stakes in the ground, or like there's these things which plants can like climb on. But in nature specifically, the creeper is always going around another stronger plant, which is kind of the lifeline. It's kind of the support for the whole thing. And this is something that is necessary. So this Guru Parampara is actually the support of our Bhakti Lata, of our Bhakti Lata, that what this creeper of devotional service is growing up on is the Guru Parampara. And specifically in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya describes that this Guru Parampara is actually non-different. He calls Krishna Charana Kalpa Taru, or something like that. That the desire tree of Krishna's lotus feet is that which the Bhakti Lata is meant to take shelter of. And we have access to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna by the process of following Guru Parampara. And in the Adi Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear this description of the tree of devotional service. So the Chaitanya tree is what many people call it, where there's the central roots, which is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the trunk, and then there's so many branches of all of his devotees. And specifically in our line, we're following the instructions of Rupa Goswami, where we are Rupa Anugas, and we're following him in his instructions on rasa, and we're also following Jiva Goswami in his teachings of Bhakti Siddhanta. So both of these are considered to be very large branches of the Chaitanya tree, and these branches are very firm, very sturdy supports which we can latch onto and go all the way back to the lotus feet of Krishna. So this is the description in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and anyways, I skipped around a little bit, but So this is the central aspect of yoga, this guru parampara. And in other processes of yoga, or even in worldly activities, this perverted reflection of guru parampara is just as important. That if you want to be a great materialist, then you have to latch on to other people who are already great materialists. And if you want to be a great yogi, then you also have to have a guru. You also have to take shelter of something. And so what is separating these creepers of material desires, and which Prabhupada is describing as basically the purusharthas, the artha, kama, moksha, and dharma. These four things, which basically can categorize the unlimited varieties of material desires of the conditioned soul. These four different, you can almost view them as pillars of material existence, and these pillars of material existence make up the support of the materialists. That they're cultivating, we can understand, they're cultivating a creeper of material desire, whether it be for economic gain, whether it be for sense gratification, following religious principles without understanding the real point of it, and ultimately impersonal liberation, which is the most dangerous type of cheating religion. I always forget the Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in the Adi Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says that this impersonal, this desire for impersonal liberation is the greatest type of Kaitava Dharma. Kaitava Dharma Pradhan, or Kaitava Pradhan, I forget the whole thing. Something Moksha, Kaitava Pradhan, where it's described. So it's described that the biggest type of cheating religion is to cultivate the desire, or to preach preach the impersonal liberation, preach that impersonal liberation separate from Krishna is the goal of life. And this is the most dangerous thing, because if one puts all of their shakti, all of their energy into cultivating this creeper of impersonal liberation, they ultimately find no shelter. The karmis, they might find shelter on some higher planet. Their creeper might grow to some heavenly planet up there. The yogis, their creeper might grow all the way up to Siddha Loka, where everyone has mystic powers and all these different things. But the person who is striving for impersonal liberation, they actually never find any eternal shelter. Of course, the materialists, they never find eternal shelter. But what's most dangerous about the cheating religion of the impersonalists is that they practically permanently destroy any chance of cultivating the bhakti lata. That they practically destroy any chance of one actually developing any kind of devotional sentiment for the service of Krishna. So this is the most dangerous type of cheating religion. And all of these different material desires can be purified through the process of bhakti yoga, and also we're reading about this process here. And it's a technical process here, and it's also technical in bhakti yoga. We just don't necessarily see all the moving parts going on. It seems like a very simple process, but there's a lot going on. We have to go through the same level of purification that this yogi is going through here, and ultimately the yogi, after giving up all material desires, after giving up all of his senses and all of these things. Here in this verse, we're reaching the point where the devotee penetrates through the entire material universe and ultimately reaches the Viraja river. And Prabhupada explains that Viraja, it means, it's a combination of the two words vigata, which means eradicate, and rajas, which means the material influence. So this viraja, once bathing in this spiritual water, one becomes fully clear of all material desires, all material designations, and he comes to the point of pure self-realization. So one's escaping from the coverings of the material universe after bathing in this spiritual water. One at least has the qualification to enter into the spiritual planets. And Prabhupada is talking about this Vasudeva Sattva, this mode of pure goodness, which is beyond the three modes of material nature. And he doesn't say that this is the perfection of life. He says that this will help one go to the kingdom of God, that this being in the mode of pure goodness will help one go to the kingdom of God. So once one becomes free of all material desires, then what is most important is that they recognize their eternal position as a servant of Krishna. And this is only available to those who have received the mercy of Krishna by getting a bona fide spiritual master. And from that spiritual master, they have received the mercy of getting the seed of devotional service. So specifically here, we're talking about a bhakti yogi who he must have gotten the seed of devotional service, and he has cultivated this all the way outside of the universe. And now that he is in the spiritual waters, all he can do is go up to the spiritual planets. Now the bhakti lata can only take shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna, which specifically Prabhupada says that the bhakti lata grows all the way up to Goloka Vrindavan. That there's innumerable Vaikuntha planets, and all these things are there, and the bhakti yogi can go there. And but specifically Prabhupada says that the potential of this bhakti lata is that it can go all the way to the highest spiritual planet, which is Goloka Vrindavan. And the reason why there's a distinction between Goloka Vrindavan and the rest of the Vaikuntha lokas is that in the Vaikuntha lokas, so we've all heard about the five main rasas, the five spiritual relationships which we can have with Krishna, which are favorable. All five of these are available in Goloka Vrindavan, but only 2.5 of these are available in the Vaikuntha lokas. That one can worship God in Shantaras, where he's worshiping God with awe and veneration, and there's almost like a fear of God there. One can also worship God in the Vaikuntha lokas in Dasya Rasa, where one is a servant of God. And the half is called Gaurava Sakya, where one is worshiping God as a friend, but that friend is superior to him, and he still has this awe and reverence. And so the other half of that is called Vibhita or Vishrita or something like that. Do you know Vishrita Sakya? It's the level of worshiping God as an equal friend. And this is what separates Goloka Vrindavan from the Vaikuntha lokas. And of course, in Goloka Vrindavan, we also have Vatsalya, the parental affection, and conjugal rasa. And these are not available in the Vaikuntha lokas. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he describes that it's important to have your, we as Gaudiyas especially, we are striving to go to Goloka Vrindavan. And he explains that it's important to do this because if we, you might develop very strong feeling for worshiping God with awe and veneration, and you might be in one of these 2.5 rasas that are available in Vaikuntha. But if one is worshiping God as a servant and seeing him as, very, with awe and reverence and all of these things, then if he is still contaminated by material desires, he will search for these other 2.5 rasas in the material pool, in the mundane pool, where he will, because he doesn't have a friend on the equal level, he will search for one in the material world. Because he doesn't have family life on the spiritual level, he will search for it in the material world. And of course, the conjugal, if he can't be that intimately related with God, then he will search for a girlfriend or something in the material world. So the bhakti lata, it takes full shelter in Goloka Vrindavan. This is the highest of the highest, and this is what Prabhupada is talking about whenever he says that the bhakti lata goes all the way to the lotus feet of Krishna. And of course, there are descriptions, this. Ananda chinmaya rasa pratibhavitabhistabhirya eva nijarupataya kalabhi. that Krishna's spiritual energy is all pervading in the spiritual world, but specifically Krishna is eternally in Goloka Vrindavan. That of course his energies are everywhere, he's expanding everywhere, and especially in the spiritual world, everything is spiritual, everything is of the same spiritual quality, but specifically Krishna is in Goloka Vrindavan, and we are ultimately trying to cultivate the desire to go to Krishna, go to Goloka. So this is another point. And so for one who has cultivated this creeper of devotional service all the way up to the spiritual world, Prabhupada talks about how it starts to fructify, where by the process of watering through hearing and chanting, then it starts to develop fruits of love of God. And Prabhupada is talking about how once one has achieved such a state of love of God where he is offenselessly chanting, then he can taste this fruit even while being present, apparently physically present in the material world. One qualification of a spiritual master is that he has attained this fruit of love of God, and he is also able and willing to distribute this. And this is a qualification of a bona fide spiritual master, this harirati paladana svadanananda dhamma, that he is fully eligible to not only taste but distribute the fruit of love of God. And this is the qualification of a spiritual master, because only he can give one the seed of devotional service. And so yes. Now, if the spiritual master is not bona fide, or if the hearing process is not bona fide, or the chanting process is not bona fide, then one will naturally not water the seed of devotional service if he has gotten it in the first place, but he will cultivate so many other material desires, so many unwanted creepers is what Prabhupada calls it, so many unwanted things. And like I was saying, these generally fall into these four categories of artha, kama, dharma, and moksha. But Prabhupada says that the potential for the living entity to come up with material desires is completely unlimited. The only problem is that the material world, there is only limited amount of sense gratification that we can get. So that's why we're always unhappy. And for people who are trying to cultivate material desires, and specifically we can think of this like there's only one post of presidency in the United States. And if everyone was trying to become the president, then of course we would be cutting each other's throats. It's like only one can get it. There's a limited supply, but an unlimited demand. And because of this, there is so much war and so many problems in the material world, simply because everyone has unlimited material desires, but there is a limited amount of material sense gratification that we can achieve. And in the society of devotees, we are meant to transcend this this non-cooperation. That like I was saying, our bhakti lata is meant to grow on Guru Parampara, and in this spiritual path that is going all the way to the spiritual world, there is unlimited resources. There is unlimited potential for every single person to take full advantage of Krishna's mercy, which is unlimited. It's completely unlimited. The bhakti latas, they don't need to fight over getting sunlight. They don't need to fight over getting space. All these things are completely unlimited. And what separates that from the materialist is that there is completely limited material sense gratification that we can access in the material world. Therefore, all of these problems are occurring. So whenever we see these problems of non-cooperation within the society of devotees, we can understand that it is only because they are cultivating the creepers of material desires. And this can be attributed to the fact that they are not hearing properly. Of course, they might come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master. Of course, they might come in contact with pure devotees who are there to help them engage in this devotional service. But if they are not hearing properly, then not only is the hearing process contaminated, but their chanting will also be contaminated. All of their activities will be contaminated with desires like to be in charge, or to have the bigger room, or to have this or have that. And within the society of devotees, if we see these types of things happening, then we can understand that the root of all of this is that there is a problem in hearing the pure message of God. And this is coming down through Srila Prabhupada. Lord Chaitanya, he specifically incarnated in this material world for us to benefit off of the process of Sharanagati. Atyanta Durlabha Prema, Karibari Dan, Shikhai Sharanagati Bhakatera Pran. That this Krishna Prema is so incredibly rare and hard to get, but he has specifically come down to teach us the process of Sharanagati, of surrender, so that we can develop this love of God. And this is being delivered to us via the medium of the spiritual master, via the medium of Prabhupada, which is coming down in its completely pure state. So if we're if we're experiencing troubles in our spiritual life, if there's non-cooperation between the devotees, then we can only understand the only thing which is hampering our advancement in spiritual life is ourselves. And you can point fingers all you want, and you can you can point fingers all you want, but ultimately the problem gets traced back at a problem with hearing the proper message. And like I was saying, if you cannot hear properly, then you cannot chant properly. Gora Bihita Kirtan is not possible without Gora Bihita Shravan. The Kirtan which is pleasing, which is bona fide, which is authorized by Lord Chaitanya, is only possible if one has heard properly, has heard from the proper sources, is associating with devotees nicely. All of these things are very important. And Prabhupada, so many times he explains that one is not qualified to do kirtan if he is not hearing properly. So this is the most important thing, that if one, and specifically, it's not just that you hear, you're always hearing lectures, this and that, it's that you fully assimilate what you're hearing. It's that you fully, you make it one, what is this? Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, Chetete Korya Aikya, Arana Kari Homaniyash. Srila Narottam Das Thakur, this song that we're singing every day is in the very beginning of his Prema Bhakti Chandrika, which is basically an exposition on how to develop love of God. And some of them, these points that he's making in the beginning are the most integral principles that we must be willing to follow if we want to attain love of God. That we should be willing to make the instructions coming from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master one with our heart, and we should be willing to have no other desire than that. This is bona fide hearing. If you can do this, then you're qualified for chanting. If you're not hearing properly, then your chanting will inevitably be offensive. And you Bahu Janma Kari Ari Shravan Kirtan Tabutana Pai Krishna Pare Premadan, that you can go on chanting offenselessly for unlimited lifetimes, or you can change your attitude. You can change your attitude, and through the process of devotional service, and you can actually begin to mitigate the offenses at the holy name, and you can also begin to chant offenselessly. And this is the process of Sharanagati. We're all coming to Krishna consciousness with so many imperfections, with so many impurities, but the very process itself is what cleans you of all these imperfections. Specifically in this Sharanagati, of course we have this verse which is quoted by Rupa Goswami, the Sharanagati. Shadvidha, so basically in this series of principles being described there, we start with accepting what is favorable, rejecting what is unfavorable, and we go down, and at the very end of it, then we hear about humility. But what's interesting is that Srila Bhaktivinoda has put humility in the beginning. In this series of songs, which we're in the songbook Sharanagati, all of the songs on humility come at the beginning. And His Holiness Bhaktivikas Maharaj, he explains that this is because this is the most important aspect of Sharanagati, that one must become humble, that And actually, this is the main purpose of having a spiritual master, is that with the sword of knowledge, he cuts your false ego. There's a wonderful verse in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam which describes this. I'll just read the translation. You should consider how, by the influence of my illusory energy, these three states of the mind caused by the modes of nature have been artificially imagined to exist in me. Having definitely ascertained the truth of the soul, you should utilize the sharpened sword of knowledge acquired by logical reflection and from the instructions of sages and Vedic literatures to completely cut the false ego, which is the breeding ground of all doubts. All of you should then worship me, who am situated within the heart. So here we're hearing about the yogi becoming fully purified of his material senses, of his mind, of his intelligence, and ultimately the false ego, which is the most subtle. And in the process of bhakti yoga, the spiritual master, he teaches you to control the senses, and ultimately it's the same thing. The only difference is that we are purifying our senses by this Atmindriya Priti Vancha Karibari Kam. That lust is that, so whenever you're trying to satisfy your own senses, that is called lust. Whenever you're trying to satisfy the senses of Krishna, that is called love of God. And so the process of devotional service is that we engage our senses in trying to serve Krishna's senses. And in this way, the senses are purified, gradually the mind becomes purified. And ultimately, the spiritual master with the sword of knowledge, he destroys the false ego of the living entity by making it very clear, by preaching the pure message that you are an eternal servant of Krishna, that you are in Maya, that you need to fix all this, you need to start acting like a servant of Krishna, because that's what you are. And, this is the primary function of the spiritual master. And if the spiritual master is not preaching this, then he's not a real spiritual master. That he's not sowing the seed of devotional service in the hearts of his disciples, that his kirtan is contaminating his disciples, and they're growing so many other material desires in their heart. And these are the problems which we are experiencing in our own movement, what to speak of the material world, that all the non-cooperation going on in our movement today is because of disregarding the principle of pure hearing, disregarding the principle of using your intelligence to distinguish what is good and what is bad, and ultimately surrendering to a bona fide spiritual master. This is something which is lacking in our movement today. So, anyways, there's so much more that can be talked about these. Prabhupada, I don't know if whoever wants to speak tomorrow, they can try to go through some of the points that I missed, but, you can talk about this for eternity. Anyways, there's 2 minutes left if somebody has any quick questions or comments, and we can take them.
That the lack of the 2.5 rasas in the spiritual world, in the Vaikuntha planets, means that there's a danger of the living entities falling back into the material world because of the lack of those rasas?
No. So yeah, I didn't explain it very well. This is in Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav that I can show it to you. It's not that you fall down from there. Like if you're situated in there, then you're there. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta explains that if you're worshiping God just for the purpose of having a relationship like this with Him, then naturally the conditioned soul will try to get these other relationships from mundane spheres. So like basically, if you're trying to cultivate a relationship with God solely and wholly with awe and reverence, then typically, I think the language is much better in the book, but it's basically that typically the conditioned soul will search for these higher, these so-called higher rasas in the mundane sphere. I can show you the quote. I'm not explaining it so well.
First I have to see what you're referring to. But the point is that when the conditions, all these planet they may be, they are fully satisfied in the
Right, right.
that they're experiencing.
Yeah, this is talking about conditioned souls who might have some feeling for God with awe and reverence, but who tend to search for family life and friendship and sexual life elsewhere.
You're speaking about
Only conditioned souls.
souls, meaning that they still have material planets.
Right, right. This is my. I can show you the quote. It explains it much nicer.
If it's something within the material world is another thing, but if you definitely into the spiritual world is another thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But even those who are established in Gaura Sakya with the Supreme Lord, now how is it that, Gaura Sakya is a big thing, like someone is
Yeah.
on such a high platform. Maybe if you just read it.
Yeah, yeah.
He's saying that it's about conditioned soul. You're not going to Sakya if you're conditioned soul.
What about like Sri
But Sri Vaishnava is like,
No, I know,
that's the
but
thing.
you're not if you're a conditioned soul, it's one thing.
Isn't our understanding that, okay, you may have those desires, but that's redirected towards like serving the Supreme Lord with those, let's say you have like, like you have a
I
material
don't,
desire.
see, the thing is, we need to see what he's referencing,
Yeah.
Okay.
you know?
Yeah. It's explained much nicer there. It's something like he's saying like not to diminish, these other sampradayas who are propagating that this is the highest, but actually this is the highest. Kind of like that.
There's some fallacy in the way you're explaining. it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what you're referring to, so I don't want to comment on something that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur may have said otherwise, but at least in the way you're explaining it, there's some fallacy.
Sure, I can show it.
Also, you're speaking about Bhaktivinoda Thakur putting humility on top.
Hmm.
Bhakti Correspondent has a series of lectures known as Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Lamentation, where he goes over
Right.
the Dainya section.
Jai. Okay, we're over time. So thank you very much.